Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Bobby and Beardy Show. Today we're going to be talking about Gladiator 2. Plenty to talk about, so we're going to go straight on into it, with the exception of there are time codes below so you can do spoiler-free and spoilers. Also, there's a 1-minute Heretic review that Mr. Beardy over there did. And also, if you want a 1-minute review of both Gladiator 1 or 2, they're on the channel as well. I'll put links in places. You'll find them. Here's the rundown. Released in the UK on the 15th of November this year with a 2-hour and 28-minute runtime. Doesn't feel like it, gotta be honest. With a net budget, according to Deadline, of 210 million. Currently made 87 at the old box office. Not bad. But the original did very well, so. Set 16 years after the original, but made 24 years after the original. It's time for the long-awaited, but not necessarily expected sequel to Gladiator. Gladiator 2 is an epic historical action film directed and produced by Ridley Scott. He directed the first one as well, of course. Written by David Scarpa from a story he wrote with Peter Craig. It stars Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, Joseph Quinn, Fred Herchinger, Leon Araz, can't read my own notes, Derek Jacobi, Connie Nielsen, and Denzel Washington. I won't go into the original ideas for the sequel, specifically written by Nick Cave all those years ago after basically in like 2001, 2002 kind of stuff, when they were like really spitballing, making a sequel. Russell Crowe returning, even though he's bloody dead. But I implore you to look into that stuff because it's absolute perfect nonsense. This sequel is a lot more grounded than that would have been, put it that way. But Benny's, what's the blooming story?
So weirdly, no gladiators. No, of course there is.
What?
So 16 years later, Rome has fallen into huge corruption. It is not the dream that Marcus Aurelius had, which never gets mentioned in this film, weirdly. Not the 67 times it actually does get mentioned. Yeah, and it's very much a different general now claiming land for Rome, and then meets our protagonist, Hanno, who may or may not become a gladiator a bit later on, in a very similar parallel to the first film.
I don't think he does. I don't think no, I just don't see that happening. No.
There's almost no parallels between this film and the first one. There's no similarities at all, as far as I can.
They certainly haven't. Oh man, I'm getting into Salty's behaviour already. They don't revisit the same well several times. Put it that way.
Oh yeah. Basically, if you've seen the first one, you have a rough idea what might happen in the second one. There are some changes, and I think they play out quite well. But I want to say this in there, but it's very much someone had the idea of, like, you know, the meme of, yes, you can copy my homework, but change it a bit. It's that. Yeah. You can see it's the same, but there are a few changes that firstly I didn't see some of them coming. Others were telegraphed a mile away. I saw them from home before I even left for the cinema. But yeah, it follows a similar vein. It's got some great action epics. It's Ridley Scott, so those big set pieces, historical based. I think we're going to discuss the opening scene and obviously the Colosseum fights. They play out very well. He's very good at that. Casting, pretty good. Some of the acting is significantly better than the others. But overall, it's a faithful follow-on. If not perfect, it at least feels faithful.
Well, it's definitely not perfect. It's had some big old shoes to fill, some big performances to match. It really succeeds in some areas and kind of falls flat in some other areas. It's very much a swings and roundabouts kind of film. I kind of left the film a bit confused, going, did I enjoy that? Like, because I like this stuff, but I didn't like this stuff. Yeah. Visually, in places incredible, especially if you've just rewatched Gladiator 1, like I had.
Of course.
Because those are some dated graphics now, 24 years on. There's a monkey arena fight, which it basically it doesn't look as good. It's too close up. It's too there. Yeah. You're just looking at this not real monkey attack people, and it doesn't work. Also, I don't believe any of them survived that horde of monkeys. They looked aggressive as heck. The opening battle scene, you see the armada of ships. My cat is causing shenanigans over here, I tell you that much. An armada of ships. We've got Pedro Pascal, the Roman general, leading the attack. I thought that was all fantastic on this. I think they're in Africa. Were they in Africa?
They are, yes, yes, yes.
On the coast, sailing in. I think some of the fights in the arena are really interesting, and it's good that they've shaken it up, and they've introduced rhinos being ridden as horses. I'm not sure that's accurate, but I enjoyed it. There's boats and there's sharks. It's all good stuff, keeping the Colosseum fresh, whereas maybe some of the story elements might not necessarily be. I think some of the performances, Pedro Pascal and Denzel Washington, specifically Denzel Washington, because Pedro's just a very reliable hand. He's just good in everything, basically. Denzel Washington, not to say Denzel Washington isn't good in everything as well, but he's incredible in this. He is the master manipulator, working his way up the ranks behind the scenes. I enjoyed the Twin Emperors and their quirkiness. I think you didn't as much as me.
I'm very torn on it. So I think, like we mentioned yesterday, Commodus in the first film is such a strong, petty character. There is an element to the Twin Emperors in this being inept and Rome falling apart because there's no serious council, and I get that. In that respect, they are fantastic for it. I just feel like they fall a bit short after. Yes, Commodus was petty. The reason that everything fell apart was because his dad didn't love him. But
it's bad dad, classic bad dad.
It's Bobby and Beardy bad dad. But yeah, I grew to like them more and more as you see how they unfold and a bit of the chaos that they bring. But originally they just seemed really weak and whiny, and I didn't like it. But there's a lot of this as you go through it. There's multiple characters, multiple storylines that I thought progressed better. Originally it just felt like copy and paste job, and then it was like, oh, interesting twist, or
yeah,
not.
I like the Emperors. I like what they brought to the table in there. It's not just Maximus versus Commodus in this one. They're floating around being absolute wackadoos,
technical term,
causing shenanigans, feuding amongst themselves and other people, and just being generally absolutely insane. I quite enjoyed them. Didn't really enjoy Paul Mescal as much. I'm gonna be honest. I think he's given some hammy lines to say which cannot be nailed.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. Again, it's not a spoiler, but that whole he gets given the wooden sword as a potential freedom thing, and then kills someone with it, and he's like, wood or steel, it's a point to point, and that just feels really terrible. But again, the issue is, I think some of the fight scenes he does really well. The action stuff is pretty good. I think again he can't carry what Russell Crowe did. The "My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius" speech specifically will go down in the annals of like great cinema.
Yeah,
and it just doesn't flow from Paul.
An Oscar-winning perfect performance from Russell Crowe, delivering some lines that if they were said poorly they could be just as hammy, but he's got that presence and that authority to like really convey strength and things. Another thing about Paul Mescal's character, literally says to himself, I'm not a general. But then every time you actually see him in a fight, or like the opening battle, or any of the fights in the Colosseum, he's giving orders just like Maximus would, and you're like, well, you can't have what's going on here? You can't do this.
Like right at the beginning of the film, you see him running an army. Like maybe he's not officially a general, but he's controlling the army.
He's doing a pep talk. He's running that line like on the battlements. He's in charge on that quite clearly. He's giving it us all. I think this film, I want to say more about this stuff in spoilers, definitely. I think this film ties itself way too closely to the original, both in the repetition of what happens or tries to happen in certain places. I know you've got to end up with a slave in the Colosseum, but
yeah,
there are certain ways to get there necessarily. I think because it's tied so closely, surprisingly closely to the first film, it doesn't allow it to stand on its own and flourish, where it could have done had they let Pedro Pascal's character just kind of take the run at it, rather than having Hanno be the main thing, and what happens with him and all of that good stuff that we'll discuss in spoilers.
Yeah, I do think that there are some elements. Again, it is very much a carbon copy of the first with a few twists to make you think that it isn't. I do like the element, obviously in the first film you very much got Maximus's character and Commodus's character, and that's pretty much the two sides of the coin. Whereas in this you've kind of got maybe two or three on each side, and as one does something, another reacts, and it kind of spurs the story along in a different way. And in that sense, it did feel slightly different. But again, you can't look at it and think, well, this is direct inspiration from the first film.
All I'll say is, get better at organising rebellions and plots against the emperors.
Oh my God.
Come on, the Senate. What are you doing, the Senate? You're making yourself look like idiots. I've said quite a few negative things there in our spoiler-free section. I just want to stress how good some of the other performances and aspects are from Pedro, from Denzel Washington is just phenomenal throughout. That really like lift this film up to where I can almost forget about the stuff that I'm not so keen on. But my main problem is I didn't really like the lead. I don't like the performance necessarily. I don't like what they give him to do, and I don't like the backstory that they've got working around there as well. So it kind of pulls me down. I'm ready to go into spoilers if you're almost ready.
Kind of, yeah. So I think right after this we go into spoilers. Like I want to say from my notes, one of the things I got from the beginning of the film was that Denzel's character, to me, I put it down as a poor man's Proximo from the first film. It didn't feel to have as much character to him, as much reason why he was doing it. Made no sense. Obviously that completely changes, and we'll discuss that massively in spoilers. But I think that says so much about his performance that at the beginning he's just a throwaway sort of character who helps spur the story along, and then he is the story. And
he is kind of the story.
Outstanding.
You're absolutely right. He starts off just like he's the guy who buys Hanno and it's like putting him to work and stuff. And like, okay, and they have this relationship where they're kind of going to start using each other for each other's goals and things. But then, Denzel takes that and runs with it massively. I'm going to give it a thumbs up, but it's a very almost.
So I
think it's worth seeing.
Up. Oh, 100%. Yeah, completely agree. I think I said this to Tegan last night. It definitely, to me, deserves a thumbs up. It's a good film. The problem is it has such a legacy to fall back on, and in comparison, it's not a good film. That's the problem. Compared to a lot of things, it is good, especially this year. Compared to a lot of films, it's good. But after Gladiator, it's an epic. This doesn't feel as epic.
No. Spoilers?
Spoilers, 100% yes.
All right, so Hanno is bloody flipping Lucius from the first film, the kid. I hate it. It's kind of a bit boring. It's really contrived how he gets brought back in. Okay, so he goes on the run at the very end. They kind of like retcon the end of Gladiator, where everyone's carrying out Maximus. You see the Queen and Lucius scamper the other way, and she sends him out into the country, and then he gets lost and ends up joining a tribe and things. So he happened to survive the battle. He happens to get bought by Denzel, and he's super, like, it just happens to be the most important thing in his rise to power that he can possibly use. It's just like, oh, come on. Seriously, Kat, I'm going to have to get you to leave. Please, mate. You're driving me mad here.
Parts of it I didn't mind. Like, I think the retconning situation, I want to discuss that a little bit more, because there's another section that gets retconned a little bit in my mind. I can understand, like, Lucius in the first film, he's quite soft. He's raised to be a royal or an emperor, and you don't get as much strength from that. I get that. I do think 16 years on the run can harden a person. 16 years of building hate against the Roman Empire can harden you. And yeah, by the beginning of the film, we see him, he's running, partially running an army. He's quite a good warrior. He's got a warrior wife who's a big plot point. I can see how it could happen. I don't believe it.
I can see how that would, like, the start to the finish. It's just that when he gets brought back into the main story, I'm like, okay.
It's a little bit too fortuitous.
Yeah, it's just a bit unbelievable that that's how it would work out. I was really hoping they were doing a fake out, and like, because the Queen realizes that it's Lucius and goes to see him, and he denies that he's Lucius at the first. And there was a moment there when I was like, maybe he's not actually, and that will be fantastic. But then it really quickly becomes obvious that no, actually he is just Lucius, and they're just doing that. And that's a bit. Oh yeah, I don't know. It just feels really like, oh really? The fate happened to do all of this way, and it just felt a bit weird.
There's I think a couple of the parallels that I want to quickly address and shoot down, say whether they're good or bad. So for me, one of the big scenes in the first one is Russell Crowe's character keeps walking through the wheat fields, trying to get home, trying to get to his family. In this one, it's sort of a dark river. It doesn't carry the same weight. It doesn't feel as good. It's fine, but that walking through the wheat field is iconic. And this doesn't carry the same weight. It just doesn't.
It's a pretty poor echo of what they're trying to achieve, to be honest. No, I agree.
I think so. One of the things I was quite sad about is I'm going to butcher his name, and I apologize. He's one of my favorite actors, Jimon Honsu or Digimon Honsu.
Desmond Honsu,
the first
I think.
Desmond. I think his character was fantastic in the first one. His character is still alive. I would have loved to have seen him come back. Supposedly they were supposed to, and there was a reasoning that he couldn't do it, or they written him out of it, which is sad. I would have liked to have seen it. I do think the effective similar character in this, Ravi, the Doctor, does a good job. He's an interesting twist. He becomes quite an important plot piece. He's a good friend. I think it works again quite nicely, but it's a very much cut and paste job from the first film.
Yeah, it would have probably worked better if it was, the same character coming back, in a way. But wasn't to be. It was an okay replacement. But yeah, it is kind of like, well, this is a copy and paste. It's the same sort of thing, same sort of relationship. And we'll move on.
The thing is, they had no problem bringing people back. Gracchus is back as one of the senators still, significantly older, which is fine.
He looks like he's aged 24 years in 16 years, I would say.
Yeah, weird how it's 24 years. I think the music was good. Score is fantastic, but it's very much the first one, just tweaked slightly.
Yeah, it's Hans Zimmer and oh my god, Lisa, what's her name? Didn't return. It's a different person. And they kind of some of the songs are just outright taken.
Yes, 100%.
And a lot of them are just heavily referenced, which you kind of expect and understand. But
yeah, I think, again, we disagreed on this, but I think the opening credits obviously gives you sort of a catch up on what happened in the previous film. The music in it starts really nice, but then the really emotional ending kind of gets put to music that's very like dun 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 heavy, and it jarred me when I first saw it. It's literally, I remember that the entire way through because I didn't like it.
That should have been the giveaway, that it was going to be far more tied to the original than I thought it was going to be. The fact that literally the opening thing is a watercolor effect kind of vibe on footage from the original film.
Yeah, boiling down a 3-hour epic fantastic movie into like a 2-minute opening, which fine.
They also play the same song at the end of the first film, at the end of this film, and I did not feel like they earned the right to do that song. That song has a special place in my heart because Gladiator is one of the few films that can either does or almost makes me cry every time I watch it. It's just got that hook in there for me.
I'm a sucker for self-sacrifice, and I don't know many films that do it as good. And this, again, it's very much the "how dare you stand where he stood" situation. Like, kind of, you didn't do it right. Yeah.
Also, there's okay. This is the thing that annoyed me the most. It's not even the biggest problem, but there is absolutely no way in hell that Maximus was buried under the Colosseum like they claim in this movie. There's no way. That man was carried out by senators, the Queen originally, and the Emperor's guard themselves, while Commodus lies there in his own blood, potentially still drowning after getting stabbed in the neck. That man 100% got a state funeral. But all his cool personalized armor and stuff. That's just down in the basement. Any old scrub can go and touch and grab whenever they want. No. Nonsense, I say.
Again, on that, it's something it really jarred me at the time. All of the writing in these films is always very sort of Latin. It's Roman writing. But his quote is just written in fine English into the stone above his armor.
I don't know why they did that. They could have had it in Latin and just read it out loud. And everyone would have been like, okay, we recognize the words you're saying. Good stuff.
Even I know it's not font, but the way that it's chiseled into the stone isn't like anything else in it. It just feels, again, really weird.
Yeah.
It's nice to see the armor come back, and to be fair, the costuming in this is significantly better. Obviously, it's 24 years later. There's better stuff you can do, but obviously my Tegan, used to do costuming at university. And yeah, she was impressed by some of the costume sort of decisions and how they did it. It's really well done.
I think the film in general looks really good, apart from that monkey fight.
Yeah, the monkey fight isn't great. The shark CGI isn't fantastic. The rhino one isn't bad though.
They kind of cut away from the shark pretty quickly. They don't linger too much on it. The rhino does look good.
The part that I don't get, and again, this is maybe not part of it specifically, this has a smaller budget than Red One.
Well, that's because The Rock wasn't in it, turning up late and getting 50 million.
Costing 100 million.
Insanity.
Yeah, but it's still weird that this costs less, and the fight scene at the beginning must have cost a fortune. All the Colosseum stuff must have cost a fortune. The physical set pieces they needed.
They rebuilt the Colosseum that they built the first time in basically the same location. Like, they put it back. It's insane. Yeah. Oh man, I don't know. I feel like I haven't done this film justice in highlighting the things I liked about it. But there were, I think I did walk out of the film going, I think I didn't quite like that film as much as I enjoyed it. So
yeah, I think you're completely right. Sounds like a very negative podcast, right? This episode. It does think some things well, and what it does really, really well, you can't deny. But the things it does badly, it feels like it was maybe a missed opportunity or lazy. And I think that's what drags it away so much. I think overall it's a positive film. I enjoyed it. I did go there and enjoy my time, which is why you go to see these films. But everything they did amazingly, they kind of went, let's just phone this side in. And that doesn't.
Yeah, it's the repetition, and you've seen this before, and I've copied your homework, but I've changed the name and things. Yeah. Pedro Pascal's really good, and Denzel Washington's really good, and a number of other people are pretty good as well. But what they give Paul Mescal to do.
I think the issue is if we wanted to say all the positive bits, it would take a lot of explanation of some storyline. And realistically, yes, I know this is spoilers, but go watch it. I think that will do it more justice. Then come back and see what we said makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, Denzel steals the show, which is impressive in a Pedro Pascal film.
I think other people will like this film a lot more than I've liked it. I think slightly more casual fans of Gladiator will go into this and just enjoy it for the ride and things, and not necessarily have as many bugbears, because I've just watched that film so many times and it's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
It had to be like properly perfect.
Yeah, I think that somewhat summing it up, sort of Gladiator 2 doesn't completely escape the shadow of its predecessor.
100%.
It remains entertaining and it's visually stunning as a sequel. Fans of the original will probably like how the historical epics fit together, and they'll find some joy in it. But some particular performances are memorable, and the grandiose set pieces are brilliant, but it just falls a tiny bit short of them.
I think that's the perfect way to sum it up. Let's leave it there, Beardo. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We are on Spotify, of course, should you wish to check us out on there. You can also watch us on video on Spotify these days, because we started uploading those too. All very exciting stuff. Yes, indeed. We do have 1 minute reviews as well on the channel. We're going to be doing more of those because they're quite fun, but quite difficult to do as well. But anyway, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. For Wicked, maybe, I guess. Bye!
Bye-bye.